Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Dave, Wet Fly Swing Podcast host. I've got a quick question for you today. Do you think hooking a chinook salmon on a swung fly is more exciting or hooking a steelhead on a swung fly? And do you know where some of the best rivers are to fish right now for chrome bright chinook in Alaska? Hey, how's it going? I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Podcast. And today I'm going to give you a super short snippet episode summary of the top five takeaways from episode 693 of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. You can listen to the full episode right now if you want at wetflyswing.com/693. And these tips come from Chris Childs of Togiak River Lodge. He's going to jump into all that today. He's going to talk Chinook salmon on the fly. He's going to compare it to steelhead, and we're going to go deep. But before we get into these top tips for Chinook, these top takeaways on the fly, I got a quick story that I've talked about on the podcast before about my first two-handed rod and how I got into it on the Skeena River. Basically, the way this went down was we were getting ready for a big Skeena trip, our big one, our first one on the Skeena for steelhead, and my buddies who were on the trip, we all pretty much were single hand fishermen, and I was like, I had heard about the spay, and so I picked one up. Didn't know anything about it. I picked up the Simon Gosworth and those DVDs back in the day, the Rio DVDs. Took probably I think a good month of everyday fishing, learning to cast, basically getting the basic cast down, and it was good enough to get me on the water. When I was there, we learned right away that having been able to do a spay cast, because a lot of times there were high banks behind us, things like that, it was really critical and it allowed me to hit some of that water that was a lot further out. So the big stick, I learned, and I think at the time that was like a 13 and a half foot 8 weight. So, it was pretty heavy duty, and it could just cast and turn over those heavy sinking lines, which we used at times. And some of the big flies, we were actually using some of these giant flies at the time, like 2 aughts and 3 aughts steelhead flies. So we're going to talk about that today as we get into it. But that was an amazing story. And I just wanted to share that as we get into that to remember that I took a chance, and that was earlier on in my spay journey. But right now, I'm going to get into the top five takeaways, techniques, tactics, whatever you want to talk about from Chris Childs. This is Togiak River Lodge Guide. He's going to get into the five top techniques that he discussed on when you're going to be up there for Chinook salmon. All right, number one is presentation angle for Chinook. Chris talks about emphasizing the broadside presentation, and he suggests that the 60 to 70 degree angle is better than, say, the 45 down and across. And even sometimes he talks about how going a little bit even further, maybe even 90 degrees straight across is even better. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the angle is critical. It helps present the fly more directly to the fish, increasing basically visibility and effectiveness of that fly. So remember that it's not just the downstream at a 45. It might be 60, it might be 70, it might be 90 or more. So that's the first tip. Number two, managing the swing. He discusses the importance of maintaining tension on the line. He says this is crucial for keeping the fly in the correct position during the swing and for making effective mends in the line to control the swing speed and the depth. So that's another big one. All right, number three from Chris. He points out that kings often take the fly very early in the swing. So sometimes as soon as it lands on the water, tension, you can hook up then. He mentions that this differs from other species like steelhead, which might take the fly later in the swing. He notes that kings rarely take the fly on the hang down, preferring the faster water. So that's another big one. All right, number four, as we get into this, use of two-handed rods. He also touches on his preference for longer two-handed rods, and I talked about this at the start, but 14 feet, which aid in making longer casts. Managing the swing in larger Alaskan rivers is critical. The longer rod helps in mending the line over large pools and maintaining the control of the swing. So that's number four. And the number five key takeaway from this podcast episode in this short snippet, little summary here, is broadside fly presentation. Chris emphasizes presenting the fly broadside to maximize the profile visible to fish. This is a strategic choice to make the fly appear as large and enticing as possible to predatory Chinook. So that's it. Those are five quick takeaways. I just want to give this quick short snippet episode, give you a highlight. If you want to hear the whole episode from this week's podcast, you can go to wetflyswing.com/693. And there at 693, you can get all the show notes. You can listen to the full podcast, not only these five quick takeaways, but you can get the whole episode. It was a great one. We get into Togiak. It's definitely a good one. We're going to be heading up there this year as well. And this And this kind of goes back to my big rod story. So whether Chinook or steelhead, don't be afraid to test out that big stick. It turns over heavy flies, big flies when needed. This was definitely the case for me back in BC, and the case for fishing up in Togiak in Alaska for kings. If you're interested in joining us on this big trip to Alaska this year, you can send an email to me, Dave at Wetfly Swing, and I can fill you in on the details of the trip. You can also go, like I said, wetflyswing.com/693 right now. Head over there and listen to the full episode and get all the nuggets for Chinook, whether you're fishing Alaska or near to your home waters. That's the best way. All right, I'm going to leave you with a quick quote before we get out of here. This comes from Chris. He says, the extra length of a 14-foot rod helps with mending and managing your swing through those big Alaskan waters. 5 expert techniques for successful king salmon fishing in Alaska. Togiak River Lodge style, Chris Childs. This is going to be a good one. If you like these short snippets, we're going to continue doing these. If you like them enough, you can send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. Head down in the comments or in the show notes, leave a comment there. Obviously, follow this this podcast, this show on YouTube here, and I'll do more of these. And maybe as we go, we'll do more of these talking heads and maybe get some stuff on the water. We're going to continue working on this year, so I'm excited to be digging into another channel with you. And I appreciate you for sticking in all the way here. Let me know if you get a chance to listen, and we will talk to you soon.